This is Dennis Cole. Let me find my remote. Where is my remote? Oh dear, I've lost my remote. I lost my remote. That's my fault. I can't find the remote. I don't know where it is. It's not under there.
So you didn't put it in the thing?
No, here it is. Okay. Got it, so I can turn down the volume to an acceptable streaming level. This is GrannyHandicap, otherwise known as Dennis Cole, trying to keep it together. I have a relative in the hospital, and I'm worried. So, if I sound like I'm off my game, I am. So, it's all right though. I will make it through. But my asthma is acting up, so I don't know if I'll be able to do my entire live stream tonight. I'm hoping I will be. As long as I can keep talking, it'll be fine. Let's do Edinburgh.
Welcome back,
well,
sis.
first I need to do Forzathon Live. I'm probably going to be coughing a lot during this, so I'm sorry. Let's see if I can get in. Forzathon. Forzathon, where are you? If it doesn't show up on the map, I'm not going to be able to. I'm not seeing it on the map. Oh, why? Why? Yeah, I am right. Okay. Play online, connect to Horizon Life. So I wasn't connected. And I'm probably too late to get in, but I will try. I'm fine. I really want to do Forzathon Live. Oh, it's a little raining. Okay. I want to do... Oh, and a flash completed. Yay. I'm looking for that Forza Horizon Live session. Joining session. Okay. Whoa. Alright. I'm joining session. I need to look on the map and see where it is. Okay. I'm probably in. Let's look at the map and see where Forzathon Live is and port there if I can. I am not seeing Forzathon Live, so I think I am too late. It's 8:04. Yeah, I'm too late. All right, well, let's then go up to the street race. Edinburgh, Newtown. I am going to try it again and see if I can get first place. This is very doubtful, but I'm going to try. I always try. I always try. I want to tell you that when you're handicapped, it's a whole different ball game. Going in the hospital is a whole different ball game. I've been told to leave my wheelchair at home. Going to the ER without my wheelchair. It has taken them hours to get me a wheelchair. Even though I put mobility disabled on my sheet. I have heard cases of discrimination when you go to the hospital and you are handicapped. It's more if people are obviously handicapped, but I have hidden handicaps. I really would like to improve things for people with handicaps because we deserve to be treated like real people. And so often we are relegated to, well, you're less than a person if you're handicapped. You don't count as much as somebody who's healthy and vital. You are taking up resources that maybe you shouldn't be taking up. And if there's life, somebody should be able to be treated just as importantly as the next person. But the realities of it is if you are a person of color, you are often put to the back of the line. And I've seen that happen during some of my emergency room visits. So I am very upset, to say the least, that there is no equality in the healthcare system. And I would like very much to see that changed. I would much rather, I was in the emergency room in October with what I would later find out was a slightly ruptured appendix. I am 62. I'm not at risk of appendix problems, so it was kind of an odd thing. And so I sat in the waiting room for 5 hours because it was during a COVID epidemic spike, not strike. So there I was in the waiting room, and as I always do, I watched people. There was a lady who looked Muslim. There was a man who was Hispanic with an obviously bandaged hand, arm up to the elbow, so a bad injury. There was a Hispanic mother and her child, adult child, but obviously mentally handicapped, they were also sharing my crowded waiting room. Over half of the people in my waiting room were people of color, and here I was. I wasn't in a dying condition, but when they came for me after 5 hours, they gave me a private room. Now, keep in mind that this is an emergency room, private room. So it's still part of the emergency department, but you have a room. And about an hour later,
in 400 meters, you will arrive at your
here's
destination.
the Muslim lady with her husband. Here's the Hispanic lady with her mentally challenged son. And a bunch of other people. Keep in mind, I didn't get a room right away. I was taken back to wait for a room, so I had a gurney in the hall. I had never, in all my years, I'm 62, I had never seen a situation where a hospital didn't have enough beds and I had to wait on a gurney. But what made me very angry was they gave me this private room, and here was this Muslim lady. I'm saying she was Muslim because her head was covered. And she was very upset. She was crying, and her husband had been walking around, but apparently they did not get a room, and I did. And I think that's terrible. I had nobody with me. I could have waited on a gurney out in the hall, and if they had asked me, I most certainly would have said, yes, give it to that couple. Then, a little later, a nurse went to, because where I was laying, I could see the central area where all the nurses were. And I could tell that they were nurses because nurses in that hospital wear cobalt blue. This nurse came up and everybody got quiet. I mean, they were laughing and talking like staff do. I wasn't offended by that. They were not loud by any means, and they were respectful to everybody. But here comes this nurse, and all of a sudden they're dead quiet, and I'm like, oh my. And then I see from, because these folks did get a room. They had the room next to me. So they got their room an hour later than I got my room. And from that room next to me, they bring out an empty gurney. And then I saw the nurse come, and that's when everybody went dead quiet. And then a second gurney was wheeled out. My assumption is that both of those people died, not just the husband. Because one of the staff said, oh no, Poppy died. And everybody got quiet. Now, obviously the husband had died because the empty gurney came out of that room. I don't know if they have a way of taking bodies out where you're not seeing the body go. But it was very upsetting to me that to know that someone beside me died that could have had my room an hour earlier, and that woman could have had that hour to be with her husband since he was in bad shape. He was up and walking around, but yet an hour later he was dead. It's just appalling to me that there could be such blatant racism in a hospital. You're supposed to be putting people in rooms according to how sick they are. Somebody in that bad of a shape, they should have given them my room. And here I am, I've got a room, and that man that she loved so much is dead. And I didn't see her again, so I don't know if both of them died or if it just him, but how horrible. The Hispanic man with the bad arm, I saw him go and be treated and then come out. He was speaking Spanish to his buddies, and I offered to help them, and they just looked at me like I was an alien because they obviously didn't speak much English. And how can you communicate with people if you don't speak much English? And of course I know enough Spanish to fit in a thimble, so I'm not that much help. But I wanted them to know that I would be an advocate for them if they needed it. But they were afraid because I was white, probably, and they just kind of ignored me. But I was worried about them, and I prayed about it, and I felt strongly impressed to offer my help a second time, which I did. They didn't take me up on it. But I felt so bad for them. Here's a bunch of Hispanic folks waiting in the waiting room, none of them wearing masks, and getting exposed to COVID if they didn't already have it. And I wonder how they fared. You know, it's natural for a Hispanic person not to trust white people because so many white people in my area are biased and they're mean to them. And I have a very good friend whose husband is Hispanic, and she says they won't talk to her either. They're just very distrustful of white people in general. And with good reason, because we white people don't treat people of color very well, now do we? So it's understandable that a lot of people of color don't want to get the vaccine because they don't trust the government. The government took people of color and treated them as experimental lab rats. It's terrible. It's very terrible. My mother never treated people differently because of their race. She had a lot of friends where we used to live across the railroad tracks. You know, across the railroad tracks was the poorest piece of land in the city that we lived in, and that's where all the black people lived. And Mama would go over there and talk to people and, you know, be friendly, and she would offer to help them any way she could. She was an ER nurse. She had compassion for people. She didn't care what color they were. If she was going to help somebody in a hospital, she took that oath very seriously. Because, you know, nurses have to go by the Hippocratic Oath too. Above all, do no harm. Mama told me a very touching story one time. There was a shooting on a Saturday night, and, well, there were shootings all the time, but there was this young black woman. She was a teenager. She got stabbed in the neck during one of those things. And somehow she made it to the doctor's office. The doctor was out on house calls, so Mama was there with her. She saw how severe the wound was. She knew at the time medical science didn't have an answer for that. She was going to die. So she sat by her and talked to her and held her hand while she laid there dying, and tried to just keep her calm so maybe she could last a little longer. And there's always hope, you know, there's always hope that maybe the doctor would come back and he could do something. And so she sat and held that lady's hand. And the message she gave me as a child was, you know, everybody bleeds red.
Arrived at your destination.
Everybody has organs in the same place. We are all equal. And I never forgot that. And my mother lived it. She didn't have a white supremacist bone in her body. She hated the Ku Klux Klan. She saw how they strong-armed people in their community in another part of Georgia when she was growing up. And she saw how they treated black people. And, you know, she was, as a teenager, you know, the other people that worked on the farm, because her father did not own the farm. He was a sharecropper. They were all sharecroppers, black and white, working in the fields together. And her dad didn't treat anybody differently. He treated them all like people, and he, you know, was willing to do things for them if they needed it. They all stuck together because they were in the same boat. And that's how Mama grew up. She was learning dances like the Charleston from the black farmhands, and that was kind of scandalous at the time. The Charleston was not a dance that nice girls did. But there's nothing nowadays we'd look at that and go, what? How's that not okay, you know. But the fact that black people did it tainted it in the eyes of white supremacists. You know, they're like, oh, they're black people are doing that. I wouldn't be caught dead doing that. It's like, what's wrong with you? Mama's dad didn't care what people thought, and he said what he thought. And, you know, my grandmother was basically the same way. She loved everybody. My grandparents were full of love for everybody. They never, you know, they didn't like injustice. They spoke up if they saw something that was going on that was not right. And, you know, I've always been very, very progressive in my views. And I went to Georgia State University. And one of the first things that they said is, we have people from 62 countries at this institution.
You have arrived at your
We
destination.
treat everybody with love and kindness. Our president gave a speech that I will never forget. He said, if you see somebody coming behind you, hold the door for them. That's what we do. We reach out to people. And if, you know, if somebody doesn't understand English very well, be patient with them. Don't yell at them. They're not deaf. Just speak slower and try to help them understand what you're trying to say. Communication is important. And that stuck with me, you know, and I lived it. I had a lot of black students in my classes because technically Georgia State University is listed as a black institution. That didn't stop me from wanting to go there. And in fact, it was an enhancement because, you know, I made a lot of friends. I have never been a really social butterfly or anything, but I was kind to everybody, and I experienced a lot of kindness from everybody. And, you know, you give and you get back. A smile doesn't cost anything, and especially when I passed a black person, I would smile to try to brighten their day, because so many white people would pass them and make some insult or act unfriendly or give them a cold stare. You know what I'm talking about. So, thank you. Yay. You're sweet. I think I'll save mine for later, though.
Later?
Yeah, I'm kind of full.
Alright, I'll put it back in the fridge.
Thank you. But going back to my hospital experience during the pandemic and seeing that there was definitely a difference in the way people of color were treated. And I've read a lot of articles about systemic racism and had a lot of deep discussions with a friend who, he's Republican, he doesn't see systemic racism. So I asked him, do you have any black friends? He says, no, I don't know any black people. And I said, well, you ought to get to know them. I've had many black friends, and they're better people than white people. I mean, literally, when I lived in probably a little over half black neighborhood, when I bought my house, you know, I was friendly to everybody. I made friends with my neighbors. My neighbors were, my black neighbors were better neighbors than my white neighbors. Now, my white neighbors were really, really good people, and in fact, she worked at the library. He drove the ambulance, the only ambulance in our area. So, as a matter of fact, Mr. Jimmy picked me up when I had H1N1 and I was getting physically ill so often I couldn't even get a breath in hardly, and I had to get on the stretcher, and I could barely stand up to get on the stretcher, and I was still gagging and all that, and I was horribly embarrassed. He says, "Don't worry, hun, just get up there. If you throw up, I'll clean it up." And, that's how it went. So Mr. Jimmy was a good person, and I think Mr. Jimmy and Miss Barbara, I don't think they were racist. I think they had a lot of love for everybody. But at the same time, and they brought us cupcakes when we moved in, bless their heart. I'll never forget that. And I was kind of scared because we came from Atlanta. In Atlanta, you don't just open the door. You look out the little peephole, and we didn't have a peephole at the time, so I was keeping the chain on and, just kind of scared everybody. But it wasn't because I was in a black neighborhood. It was just, in Atlanta, that's just what you do. You're careful because you never know. Crime is awful, and gang stuff goes on, and they'll just, a gang member will just do something to have a felony so that they can get in the gang, and if you happen to be somebody that gets hurt, well, that's just gang stuff. So I was scared, and we came from a neighborhood that was mostly, it was like at the corner of 3 gangs, so we had a lot of, there was a black gang, a Hispanic gang, and a white gang, all at war, right at the corner that was nearest to our apartment. So yeah, we were scared. And, it's terrible when racial hate gets into the picture, because they just hate people, not getting to know them or anything, just to hate them. I can't picture that. I don't feel that, I don't understand how somebody can hate somebody without knowing them, without knowing what they stand for, or even their name. In this country, we're supposed to be, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And, I never really understood a lot about black culture until I lived in a black neighborhood. And boy, people come out, if somebody has something going on, they come out and they help them. And we, white people, wait to be asked a lot of times. We don't just go and see somebody and care for them. And I think that's a mistake that white people make. We are too in ourselves. We are too much about our rights, our whatever. And yeah, human rights are important, but human rights should be for everybody, not just for white people. And to see in a hospital where everybody is supposed to get care according to how sick they are, not the color of their skin, it just breaks my heart. So, I can't handle it. I just can't. And of course, my nearest hospital is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, so that should probably tell you all you need
at your destination.
Very Republican, very white supremacist. This area is just, it's not a Democrat area at all. It's a Republican area. And I have a neighbor that has the snake flag that was associated with the terrorist group that went in on January 6th and invaded our house. I resent that. Yes, our house, but it's not our house to destroy things, mess up things, and mess with the I do genealogy. I love history. I never majored in it like my sister did, but I really, I love history. I am not for tearing down monuments, not because I'm for white racism or anything, but because I would love to know the history of those statues, and surely they had black people working on those statues too. So I bet you that those black people working on those statues probably hid little clues in them to express their opinion. Black people back then had codes for things. They had symbols that they knew what the meaning was. And so you've got, if you destroy a statue, would you notice those little clues that black people left? There were probably messages that black people were leaving in those white supremacist statues. So from that standpoint, from a historical standpoint, I would like the history of those statues to be known. I would like to know what black people that worked on it thought. And a lot of that artistry that goes into those statues was the work of the hands of black people. That, they didn't obviously have a fanboy relationship with those generals and people who were spouting all this white racist nonsense. And so they probably put little clues in those statues saying, hey, I'm here. I don't agree with this. And maybe they put some symbols in there that a black person would know what they meant. But if you tear the statue up, you destroy that too. So I am more a fan of, instead of taking these statues down, I think we should have funding to put statues up of the opposing viewpoint. I definitely think that if you've got a statue of Stonewall Jackson, then you should have a statue of some black person, famous or not, who stood up to him. What did his slaves think of him? And they probably wrote about it after the war. They're still finding documents coming to light written by the people who were oppressed. We should have, especially with all this movement to take out all this talk about race out of schools, which is ridiculous. White people who are white supremacists want to erase black history from the map. It's not fair. It should not happen that a teacher can't teach about slavery because of some stupid state law. I am very opinionated on this, and I truly believe that, it's great that we have Martin Luther King Day, and we have Black History Month, and we have Juneteenth now. I am a fan of Juneteenth. It's got a very interesting history. These things do not take away from white people, they enrich us. We made mistakes as a young country. We need to not hide the fact that we had slavery. We need to celebrate the fact that we no longer have slavery as an institution in this country, but we still have a long way to go. We can't just say that, white people have the right to vote, that should be the end of it. No, it's not the end of it. When we have black zip codes that don't have as much access to voting, this is ridiculous. And also, we've got a lot of incarcerated people that have lost their ability to vote. I think that, how long are you going to punish a person? If they got arrested on a drug charge 10 years ago, they served their time and they got out, Now it's on their record forever that they sold drugs. You know, maybe they were a teenager at the time they did this crime. And all of us know that teenagers make mistakes. I made mistakes as a teenager. I got mixed up with the wrong boyfriend and went to jail overnight. Talk about embarrassing. Yeah. And I've never broken the law since. I've been a law-abiding citizen. But that blot was on my record every time a background check came up, and I had to explain it because I couldn't afford a lawyer to get it erased. I think that's wrong. Since when are we such an unforgiving people? We are a Christian nation. Jesus forgave murderers and rapists. Then why are we so unforgiving of somebody with a drug charge? You know, why can't we give free drug rehab to anybody who needs it? Why can't we have mental institutions again? I'm not saying we should have big ones that a lot of abuse goes on in. But I think we should have small community facilities that are residential for people who are trying to get out of drugs to get some drug treatment. Because right now, drug treatment is for the rich. It's not for poor people. And if you have been an addict and you've spent every dime on drugs because it's very uncomfortable to have withdrawal symptoms, you know, and maybe you've stolen and maybe you've got a felony charge now because in the 80s we pushed for all these strong penalties, you know, the war on drugs, we're going to put all of them in jail. Well, we did. And look what happened. We spend billions of dollars, tax money, your tax money, goes into these prisons and even mental health prisons. Half of the homeless are mentally ill, and they should be in an institution, but there are no institutions because Reagan said, oh, we've got abuse going on in the institutions, so we just shouldn't have them. And he also wanted legislation passed to put some supports in the community. But the Republicans wouldn't have anything to do with that, and they would not pass a law to delegate funding for community help. So what happened is all these people are kicked out of the mental institutions, and they live on the street today. It's ridiculous that we put old and sick people on the street because we don't want to rent to them. We want to make more money from our rentals, and that means that we are having them on the street. So half of all homeless people are mentally ill. A good many of those people are disabled. And when you can't work and you can't make enough money to pay for apartments, guess what? You know, you say, oh, there's public housing. Yeah, waiting lists for public housing are like 3 years. What are you supposed to do in the meantime? You get homeless. You have no place to go. There are no programs. There are some programs, but the people who need them, it might as well be no programs. That's why I say that. It's not a true statement to say there are no programs. There are. But they are so overtaxed because there are so many Americans who need housing and can't get it, that here you are. You can't get the help you need. And just trying to get food stamps is a joke in Georgia. I mean, you can. But the system forgets that you've submitted paperwork. You have to submit paperwork again and again to georgiagateway.gov. And if you want to see the food stamp application, you have to actually apply to see the form. Now, why is this? Why can't you see the food stamp form? That's what I want to know as a Georgian. Why can't I see the food stamp form? And if you see the food stamp form, it has a question, are you a fleeing felon? Now, first of all, if I was a fleeing felon, am I going to tell the government? No. So it's stupid. And I am insulted that they have such a question on that form. Like they're expecting me to be criminal just because I'm poor? Give me a break. I have been in waiting rooms, in the Social Security office, at the DFACS office. If you're not from Georgia, DFACS is Department of Family and Children's Services, DFACS. So that's where you apply. If you're in Georgia and you need food stamps or you need help with you need public housing, whatever, you apply with DFACS. And you fill out this long form and you've got to have proof. And so you're having to, I understand that they need proof, so you have to have like 3 months of bank statements, and they see every single purchase you've ever made. And the Republicans tend to say, well, they need to only spend it on food. They don't need this general money from the government because there's going to be crooks trying to take it. And yeah, I know there are crooks who try to get food stamps under false pretenses, so yeah, you have to prove things. But I think the burden of proof is just horrible on people like me. It's like, you just about have to keep every receipt, every bill, everything, because you may have to prove it again, because the computer system doesn't keep it. I moved, okay? I moved. I tried every month for 10 solid months to get my address changed. I submitted my proof. Georgia Gateway, like a senile old woman, forgot that I submitted my proof, and I was asked for it again, and again, and again. They still had my Ford Explorer that I sold in 2016 on there in 2019, and I didn't have that paperwork anymore. Excuse me. I'd moved several times. It's probably in my papers, but I have no idea. I still haven't been through all those papers. And this mentality that if you're on Medicaid, you have to save every receipt. It fills up a lot of space. So I have a lot of papers, and it's just daunting to try to go through that and find something from 5 years ago, from over 5 years ago. So, I put a statement on Twitter that they take the lowest bidder and they don't make sure the software works. And this lady writes in and she says, well, this software isn't cheap. Companies spend millions of dollars on their website. Well, usually a company wants a website that works. Hello, if you've got a component where you need to store data, shouldn't you be having a reliable person a reliable entity to store that data, so you don't have to submit it again and again and again? But because we're poor people, we're not a high priority, The state doesn't care if we get our proof in or not. And they have this thing where you're supposed to submit your changes within 10 days of the change. But yet, here I was 10 months later, and I finally, in my frustration, went on Twitter and said DFACS needs to get their act together. And I got a call from DFACS, And they did solve my problem, but that's what it took. It took me getting on social media to get this straightened out and get my county changed on my food stamps. You know, what hope does a homeless person with no access to the internet, what hope do they have of getting help to get off the street? This is the problem, and a large number of people on the street are homeless because they are disabled. This is a crying shame. We are a Christian nation. Jesus always wanted to feed the hungry and clothe the naked. And this is our Christian responsibility. We are supposed to take care of these people. But all these Republicans, who a lot of them are fundamentalist Christians, are saying, oh, we can't afford it. Well, no, but we can afford billions of dollars for incarceration, but yet we can't take part of that money and make it mental institutions again. We can't take part of that money and make some health care for people, and we're not investigating the healthcare system because it's broken, folks. We should be looking at what other countries do, and we should be saying, well, maybe we need to change the way we do it. And all of this socialism is communism stuff just makes me sick. Socialism is not communism. Socialism is caring about the needs of the many before the needs of the few. That is not communism, where you get, well, technically, if you've read any of Karl Marx's writings, communism was supposed to be a way to take the riches of the rich and distribute them evenly towards the poor. Now, I'm not an advocate of going to Jeff Bezos or Branson or Musk and say, give up your millions and give it to the poor. I'm not going to do that because it is a free country and they have the legal right to their wealth. I am not saying that we should not have millionaires. I think that's really extreme. But if you look at communist countries today, you have a very small percentage of people who are running the government, and they live in fancy houses and stuff, and the poor people are starving. And it's most of the population. It's like, hold on, you know. You see Beijing, and you think, oh, what a technologically advanced city. But what you don't see is the experience of my friend at University of Utah in the library, who went to China to discover her ancestry. She had Chinese ancestry. Her mother was from northern China, and her father was from southern China. Or maybe her father was northern and her mother was southern. I think that's how it went. And so she went, and in one of the places she visited, the whole village was celebrating because they dug a well. Now, this was a communal well. This was not running hot and cold water to their houses. This was a well in the middle of the city. And before that, they had to walk 2 miles to draw water. Now, this is how the average Chinese lives. They are not very literate. The average Chinese knows about 600 symbols. As you know, Chinese is not an alphabet. It is pictures for people, places, and things. And it's mostly verbs. So you have constructions in the sentences like boys who break windows, then they are windows breaking boys. So you have a lot of verbs used as adjectives, and it's mostly an action kind of speech. But you consider that people are not heating their homes. They've long since cut down all the trees. There is no source of heat. And they need all of the animal dung and stuff to burn to cook. So there is, and if you're cooking over a fire, you need a lot of fuel. So there's nothing left over to heat their homes. It's terrible. These poor people are, they've got a government that's supposedly supposed to take care of them, and yet they are living in far colder temperatures than any temperatures up north in the northeast, where you have horrible winters and blizzards and all that. You've got much colder temperatures with that and no heat in their homes. And you have to kind of scratch your head and say, good grief, the Chinese aren't taking care of their people. Can you imagine being old and having no heat and being arthritic and have no health care? They're basically left to their own devices. The communist government doesn't take care of them. They don't build roads for them. They just, if you don't live in a big city, who do you? So you've got a lot of Chinese who are brainwashed into thinking the government is great, and the government is really a few old men being rich and the rest of the people starving. And that's what's happening in North Korea. And there are different flavors of communism too. Communism in North Korea is very different than communism in China, is very different from the communism that used to be in the USSR. So you can't just categorize everybody. I've known some people from mainland China and I loved them, and they were very sweet people. And one of them, I remember her vividly. She was giving my child piano lessons for free because I couldn't afford them. And she was majoring in organ at BYU. And she was a member of our church. She was a very good member. She was a wonderful person. And she comes to my door crying one day, and I asked her, what's wrong? And I hugged her, and she said, my government has recalled me. I have to turn in my visa and go back home or they will kill my family. And she was horribly upset, and that meant she just had to leave her schooling. She wouldn't get credit for it, the whole 9 yards. Her life was just over. And I felt so bad for her. So, you can diss the Chinese all you want, but I'm telling you, the Chinese people have good hearts. And it all goes back to racism. What do you do when you don't like a group? You demonize them. And it's the same thing with immigrants. I've known a lot of immigrants, and they are not the villains that these lies get spread about them, and if you went to school and you studied what happened during World War II, we were demonizing the Japanese. And if you want to spread hate, you demonize. That's just what you do. But you don't want to demonize people, because people are people. There are people who make good choices and people who make bad choices. And I think if someone makes a bad choice, and they're not basically bad people, now I'm not saying that all crooks in jail don't belong there, but I'm saying anybody with a drug problem does not belong there. They belong in a mental institution. They need to have drug treatment, and they need to have support to reenter the community. And I don't think that people should be blamed forever for one mistake when they were teenage. a white person generally will get off, especially if it's a first offense. They are not going to jail for the most part. But if somebody is poor and they can't afford a lawyer, they're going to jail, and they're going to stay there a long time. We have definite problems with incarcerating young people. There's just no sympathy for these people. And if you're handicapped and you are hallucinating, you're not going to understand what the policeman is saying to you, because you're in your own little world and you're seeing whatever you're seeing. Your reality is different. So why then do we put these people in jail, and we are even building mental health jails, which should not be a thing because they don't get mental health care there. They're just basically locking them up and waiting for them to die. This is not right. We need to save prison for career criminals, right? The ones that we can't really rehabilitate. That's the ones that we should be putting in prison and throwing away the key. But if they're mentally ill, and that's why they are a career criminal, maybe they're not a career criminal, maybe they're just not in reality. And we gotta realize that mental health issues are a serious thing. We need to have some compassion. What happened to our compassion? I've known a lot of otherwise just, compassionate people who are nice people, but yet they're like, oh yeah, people in jail, throw away the key, take away all their human rights. And it's like, what? Why? Why would we want to do that? We need to be kind to each other. And criminals, just because somebody has been put in jail doesn't mean that they're necessarily an evil person. You think of people in jail and you think mass murderers. Yeah, that's a very small percentage of people in jail. Most people in jail are there because they were homeless, or because they're on drugs, or because they're, I'm not seeing Forzathon. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm just not online or what the problem is. But I've been going on and on. I should get off my soapbox now. But really, social problems are complicated. That's why we haven't got solutions. We don't have solutions because it's a difficult subject. It's a very difficult subject. If it was easy, we would have solved it by now. But the social problems that we have, incarceration, mental health issues, physical health issues, and policing and systemic racism, all of these things are connected. We have extreme poverty in this country. We are not paying people living wages, and I know that that's a big problem for people who are, trying to run a business, and they've got a business to run, and it's hard to afford health insurance for people if you're a small business. So, I understand that there are many, many issues to social ills. There is not one solution that fits all. But we need to combat white supremacy in all its evil forms. we need to consider that there is a connection between extreme poverty, homelessness, lack of health care, lack of mental health care. Mental health is more recognized nowadays because of COVID and because of a lot of people developing mental health problems in isolation that they didn't have before. But we still need not to forget the lessons of COVID. We're not having lockdowns now for the most part. We may see them again because of a lot of people not getting vaccinated. That is, a lot of people get their human rights mixed up with, well, I have the right to not take a shot. Well, where public health is concerned, you really don't have a right not to take the shot. If it is mandated by law, you're going to be getting the shot. A lot of people don't want to do that because so many people have been up in arms, I don't want the government telling me what to do. But we need to protect everybody. And if we're going to protect everybody, we have got to have more vaccinations going on. We can't have a bunch of people getting their news from weird sources who are saying that, there's no scientific research to back this up. Yes, there is. You just don't want to believe it because you have lost all of your faith in all sources. And that's why, hello, Corrine. But that's why we need to remember that we should not be losing all trust in all sources because we've been let down by whatever, or because somebody's telling us, you can't believe anything you hear. Fear-mongering works because there are individuals that get scared. And any government that runs a government by fear, that's not going to be interested in human rights. So whether you're trying to take the human rights of people of color, or you're going to restrict the rights of homeless people to have an affordable place to live by tightening the purse strings, or you're going to make laws that make it legal for people to exclude people, that's infringing on everybody's freedom. It is important that we remember why this country was founded in the first place. Because of oppressive governments that were not letting people have freedom of religion, freedom to have equal treatment. This country was founded on the principle that all men are created equal. Not just white men, and not just men. Women also have rights, and the law is interpreted that way, that, women have just as many rights as men. So it should be further interpreted that people of color have just as many rights and privileges as a white person. So we need to be careful about how we define these things, because our democracy is at stake, folks. We are becoming cold and callous, and we look at totalitarian regimes and say, they're terrible, they're killing people, and they're, but I tell you that we are just as bad, because we are restricting health care to the rich. We are restricting housing to the rich. We are ignoring the human needs of all Americans in our rush to make sure that Republicans get everything and Democrats get nothing. It shouldn't be political. Human rights should never be political. We are free to join or not join any political party. And that is a guaranteed right under the Constitution, that we can choose where we want to be, what we want to do. We can up and move without getting a permit. We can get a driver's license. And there's no restrictions on being a certain race or a certain religion. We can vote no matter if we are black or white, but we see these subtle differences. You know, if I am able to go to the polls and I'm in a white area, you know, I have a lot more options there. One of the pushes for 24-hour voting is when people are working 2 jobs, it's very hard for them to find time to go vote. And the restriction of voting is terrible. You know, we should be expanding voting rights. We should be having easier ways to get our votes in. I'm worried right now because I've seen a change in my Georgia voting page. It used to be that I could go on my county's page and I could see my county voting schedule. Now I go on the same page and there is no county page. There is a state page that lists all days that could possibly hold an election. And I've missed several already. And I wrote to the Catoosa County folks. Now, that during the election, I was supposed to be able to put in a voting request, absentee voting form. I was supposed to be able to put that in remotely by computer, but that wasn't working in Catoosa County. So I had to, I had to get a form. I didn't have a printer. They wanted me to print it out. It's ridiculous. So I had to get a friend to print it out for me when I should have been just able to email them and get a form and fill it out online, because the Atlanta Constitution was saying, yes, anywhere in Georgia you can fill out this form online. Well, it was not true for Catoosa, and probably not for a lot of other counties. Now, Catoosa County is on the Tennessee line, and it's part of the Chattanooga Metropolitan, whatever they call it. It's part of the metro area of Chattanooga, Tennessee, but yet it's really very much like a rural county. You know, they don't have a lot of the services that other counties have that are parts of large cities. All the counties around Atlanta, you know, Atlanta comprises 15 counties. Georgia has the dubious distinction of having 159 counties. That's more counties than any state in the nation. It's weird. It's really weird. I think it is a waste to have all of this, all these little tiny places that couldn't agree on things, so they formed their own county. It's like, what? So government is probably more expensive in Georgia because there are so many counties. It hasn't improved my lot. I'm disabled, and I've been disabled since I was 40 years old. I have been able to write in and get an absentee ballot. Now, my daughter was able to get an absentee ballot last year because we had you can get an absentee ballot no matter what the reason. Well, now they have narrowed that with this stupid new law. And I'm worried that my daughter will have to go in person and she'll be bringing me every virus, every cold, because, we can't live in isolation. And it's a dangerous time right now. All these variants of COVID coming up and all this other stuff. I am not happy. So if my daughter has to go to the polls, she's probably going to bring me viruses because they're not going to require masks because we live in a Republican place. It's so stupid. We have a lot of uneducated people around here. And they're running our local government and doing an awful job of it. And, that's how we got Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I just recently found out that there is a law that says you don't have to live in the district that you are running to represent. Huh? And that's nationwide. That should not be a thing. Why is it that somebody from outside my area can come in and run for office and they're not even going to represent me? Marjorie Taylor Greene is my representative. I have written her a lot of times, about 5 times, about issues that were important to me. I got no reply, not even a form letter, but yet I got subscribed to her stupid racist newsletter, which I don't want. So, it's like, what? That newsletter is not a personal reply to me about my personal letter to her that I took hours to write. And I wasn't being disrespectful or anything. I'm very diplomatic when I write. I make my opinion known, but I do not throw out name calling or all those very unproductive things that people sometimes do. I don't write irate letters. I write carefully thought out letters expressing my opinion. I did not offend her in any way, not intentionally, but yet, here I am. I wait weeks for a response, get nothing. And so I write her again, and I say I did not get a response from you last time, and da-da-da-da, and I'm worried about this issue, and, don't hear from her. Just get a subscription to the stupid newsletter, which I promptly unsubscribed to. This is no way to run whatever it is. It's no way to be a public official. So it's like, okay, you're going to tell me that, you're my representative, but you're not going to talk to me. You're not going to say, well, I received your letter. You're just going to ignore your constituents? There ought to be some mechanism in place that if you have a representative that totally ignores you, they should be held accountable for that. I wonder how many of us have written to Marjorie Taylor Greene and gotten the same no response. She's up there doing what she wants to do, and she does not care about us at all. There is no sign that she cares about what people think in her constituency. This is ridiculous. We are in an era of representation that's really not representation. It's just a grab for power. And I hate it. If you get elected to an office, you are not just representing your Republicans, you are representing Democrats, independents, and people who didn't vote for you. You are representing everyone in the community you serve. But she has total disrespect for the office. I mean, wearing tank tops and being barefoot and all that. It's like, huh? She dresses like a slut. I'm shocked. You know, you see most representatives and they've got a nice suit coat on, or they've got a dress that is not revealing. They have respect for the government and the office that they hold. Marjorie Taylor Greene is totally disrespectful. She dresses like she's going for a workout in the gym to go to work in the Capitol. It's a travesty. And yet, there she is saying she represents me. She does not represent me. I am not anti-Semitic. I am not homophobic. I am not, I'm not going to say that, oh yeah, we should disenfranchise a lot of Americans because I don't, But Marjorie Taylor Greene gets out there and she says that Jews are firing lasers from space. And it's the Jews' fault that all these wildfires are happening out west. Why should she even be commenting on what's happening out west as far as, if you're going to talk about the fires out west, you should be saying global warming in the same sentence. It's scientifically proven. Global warming is happening, and there is unrefutable evidence of it. And yet she wants to, I guess she's a flat earther or something, I don't know. But I feel like I have no voice in my own government. I feel like since I am a Democrat, that I just don't have a voice and my vote doesn't count, and it's just, I feel this feeling of futility. And the attack on the Capitol on the 6th, that was horrible. Policemen got hurt, and nobody wants to recognize that. Nobody wants to stand up and thank them for saving their lives in Congress. And they want to just shove it under the rug and say, oh, it was a love fest. Well, I saw the videos from there. It's not a love fest. It was a massacre waiting to happen. We are lucky that we had the bravery of those police officers, and especially the black policemen who led those rioters away from the people in the Capitol. It was very brave of him to do that. He could have been killed easily. Mob violence is nothing to sneeze at, and he knew that. But yet he stood out there and acted as bait to lead them away from the congressmen because he knew what they would do if they got in there. And I just can't believe all this stuff. I usually don't get political. I have been on the internet heavily since 2009 when I launched my first book. I am not one to get into controversial things and talk about politics, but this past 5 years has been so nutso that I can't just be still about it. I have written to my congressman many times over the years. I've always gotten a nice letter back, oh, I thank you for your opinion and I will take note of it. I have always gotten a response every single time I have taken the time to write my elected official. And here comes this year, and all of a sudden I have a candidate that, Now I did get a response from the previous Republican. I will give them that. But it wasn't a personal response, it was a form letter. But I have not gotten a single personal response from any of these Republicans who were supposedly representing me. So in other words, if you're not my party, I don't represent you. You don't count. I hate that feeling. When you get elected to office, you are obligated to represent all parties, not just your party. And I am used to feeling helpless because I am handicapped and have been handicapped since childhood. I don't like that feeling. I've had doctors act really condescending towards me and say, well, it's all in your head, honey. This isn't a real thing. And then later I've been justified and yeah, it is a real thing. So, when you have rare stuff wrong with you, you have a lot of doctors not believing you, doctors thinking that it's all in your head, you need to see a psychologist. Well, I went to a psychologist, and he said to me, you need to make your doctor understand what is going on with you. You are sane. This is not all in your head. So I did. But I changed doctors, and I found doctors who would listen to me. But that was empowering. But, when you're handicapped, it's a whole different world out there. Because you quickly find out how quickly doctors will dismiss you if it's something that they don't see often and they don't understand. You will have people who other handicapped people will tell you, oh, you're just not working hard enough. I got out of my wheelchair and you can too. Well, some people can go to the Olympics and some people can't.
You have arrived at your destination.
No matter how hard they try. So, one size does not fit all. I have worked very hard to try to build myself up. Since I had COVID, it is a much harder task, let me tell you. You don't want COVID. You want to get vaccinated so you don't get it, or if you get it, it's milder. Because I think we have had it again, but we weren't tested. You have to make sure that the timing is right to go get tested. The tests aren't infallible, so you really need to make sure that when you go to be tested that it's not been too many days or not enough days since your symptoms. You've got to look at the CDC site and determine all that,
You have arrived at your destination.
But I'm thinking a lot about handicapped issues, and I'm not really concentrating on my game, and I apologize for that, but I am very upset. So let's see. Let me go try to do the street scene at Edinburgh. I'll try it again. I don't know if I can do it, but I'll try it. Yeah. But I'm just upset because I've got a close relative in the hospital who has COVID pneumonia. She won't get vaccinated. Her husband is not vaccinated. The people who work for her are not vaccinated. So, and she has not got anybody but her husband on the list that they can call the doctor and find out what's going on. I'm just scared. And this is affecting what I'm thinking about. So, if I ramble on about hospitals and procedures and the unfairness of the world, I'm really saying that I'm worried about this person in the hospital and I'm afraid they're going to die. And it's a grief that is horrible. It's horrible, just waiting, just wondering. I don't know what I had matchmaking going on for. But it feels awful to just be waiting for a phone call. They've got her on all sorts of antibiotics and other drugs, but there is really no concrete treatment for COVID-19 pneumonia. Basically, it's COVID, and one of the complications is pneumonia. And it's a waiting game. All this time she's feeling like she's suffocating. I can't even talk to her on the phone because she does not have enough breath to talk on the phone. So I'm wondering if I'm gonna ever even get to talk to her again. It's grief at its highest pitch because I don't know if she's going to make it out of it. And I'm very, very sad. Because there's just not much I can do but wait. It is hard, very hard. And I can't find out much information. I've talked to her husband. And he's like, we're just waiting. And, even if I could talk to the doctors, there's nothing that they can tell me. They don't have a crystal ball. So we just wait and see if she gets better. He says she's a little bit better today. I don't know about that. Because without being able to go see her, she doesn't want visits. She's the kind of person that she really doesn't like visits unless they're on her terms. She can have her makeup on, she can look good, she can, everything has to be just so for her. So for her to be in the hospital, it's not realistic for things to be just so. But she doesn't want to see anybody. So even her husband has not been to see her. So nobody's been in to see her. I talked to them and they're like, well, we haven't heard anything. Her husband's not talking to the doctors, which upsets me terribly. I asked him if he would call the doctor. I don't know if he will. And I don't know if that would even do any good. But I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. I'm trying to hold on to some hope that she'll pull through this, but I don't have much hope there with her medical history. So I'm just trying to survive psychologically. Nothing I'm doing is really working. there's that grief. I'm so afraid that it's going to be yet another severe grief. I've lost my parents. I've lost 4 little babies. I lost a great aunt who meant a lot to me, and she was very much like another grandparent to me. And I've lost friends, one very young. My first cousin was only 42 when she died of cancer, and it was unexpected. It was sudden. So I've been through a lot of grief. And one thing about grief is it tends to multiply when you experience grief. You tend to have more sorrow the more times that you go through grief. It gets harder every time. And, she's lived a full life. But all those things that people say when you lose loved ones, they aren't very helpful. So don't do this. If you know somebody who's grieving, don't say things like, "Oh, you can always have another baby." No, you can't. Not that baby. Don't say, "Well, she lived a full life." Well, yes, she did, but I still miss her. That doesn't affect my grief at all. So don't tell me that. Don't tell me that, "Oh, you'll get over this." You don't ever get over grief. You live around it for the rest of your life. There is a hole in your life that you cannot fill except with that person. You do get sort of back to normal. You survive grief. Yes, you survive it. And you come out a little stronger for it, depending on how you cope with it. But that grief is always going to be there. The feeling that you can't pick up the phone and call that person. You can't write to that person. You can't send a picture to that person through their messages on their phone because they're not there anymore. It is horrible. It is absolutely
You have arrived at your
horrible.
destination.
And, as much as you would like it to be just simple, you'll get through this. Yeah, I will. I have gotten through it before. I know that I can do that. But at the same time, I don't want to go through it. Nobody wants to go through grief. I don't want to go through it again. I don't want to feel that pain again because it just about killed me every single time. I got through it though. I know I would survive my grief again. But knowing that and being able to cope with it is very different. All I know is I'm really, I want to know something. I want somebody to tell me something. It's unrealistic because they can't tell me anything. They can't tell me if she's going to survive this. They can't tell me if she's going to be on a ventilator or not. They can't tell me if she's, I haven't even got anybody I can talk to talk about what chance she has. Nothing. I'm not hearing much of anything, and her husband is not calling the doctor to talk to him, which I think is horrible, but he's dealing with a lot of stuff too. he's sick too. So I understand that. I'm not unreasonable, but this is my, this is someone I really care about. And just this waiting and wondering and going crazy is all part of the process. And it is traumatic. But all I can do is wait and wonder
You have arrived at your destination.
and try to get sleep, and it's hard. I'm having a lot of trouble with my sleep anyway, before this. Now this feeling of dread is just about like a real physical thing. And I don't know what to do about it. I've got my daughter, and I can talk about it, and that helps a lot. You know, to have somebody in your corner, to have somebody to talk to. And she's really all I need. If I need to talk to somebody on a mental health line, I'm not above doing that. You know, but I've got my daughter, and I feel like I'm handling it pretty well. You know, I am able to talk about it, and I'm not suicidal. I'm not thinking about hurting myself, any of that stuff. No, I've got plenty of reasons to live, and I am very happy to keep on living. But at the same time, this is very hard. It's very hard to go through, and when you've been through a whole bunch of griefs, it's like, oh no, not again. No, 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 I can't handle it. I can, but it's hard. It's hard. It's just hard. And if you've ever had somebody dear to you in a life-threatening situation, yeah, it's tough. It has effects on your body. It's just really hard to relax or think about anything else. And just, you know, usually I survive on distraction. I'm in constant pain. I never get rid of it. And right now I'm not on pain meds because I just don't like the side effects of the pain meds. I'd rather have the pain and deal with it other ways. So my main reason that I can survive day to day is distraction. I just keep myself very well
You have arrived at your
distracted.
destination.
But when something comes up that you can't ignore, this person is very dear to me. This is a crisis, and it's going to be hard. I can't just say, well, I'll just ignore it and it'll go away, because it won't. Right now we are ready at the drop of a hat to drive 3.5 hours away to where this person lives. So that's another thing. I can't just jump in the car, go to the hospital, and just wait around, and maybe she'll want to see me and maybe she won't, but no, we can't go. Why am I not getting anything? This is weird. I don't have the little thing, but, you know, it's so upsetting. I've been through grief so many times, severe grief from people very close to me. And I know what to do. It's like an old comfortable shoe. You put it on and you do the stuff, and you know, I know what to do with myself in a grief situation. It doesn't mean that it's any easier for me because I know what to do. It's never easy, but I can,
You have arrived
you
at your
know,
destination.
I can say that yeah, it's not easy, but I can do it. It's not undoable. It's not going to kill me. I'm not going to take my life. I'm not going to end up emotionally crippled, none of that stuff. I know I can cope with it, but I just don't want to have to. But I don't want to wish life on her if she's going to come out with some of these side effects that happen from COVID. She's got a lot of health problems. So the outlook is pretty grim. And not being able to talk to her doctor about it is driving me crazy. I would really like to talk to the doctor, but she has pushed everybody away, and that hurts, She just doesn't want to deal with it, and she doesn't want anybody to make her deal with it, as if I would do that. But she's not thinking rationally right now. I doubt I would be thinking rationally if I was in the hospital with COVID, and we're just waiting to see if the antibiotics kicked in. They do try antibiotics, but COVID-19 is viral. The pneumonia may be bacterial, but at some point the immune system just kind of gets overwhelmed, and when somebody's very sick like that, they can get other diseases at the same time. So since my daughter and I have been fully vaccinated, we can go and see her if we want to. But she doesn't want to be seen in that condition.
You have arrived at your destination.
And I understand that. She's the kind of person that when she gets sick, she just wants to be alone. That's all well and good, but you can't be alone in the hospital. You've got people coming in day and night, checking on you. They wake you up when they put the blood pressure cuff on you. They wake you up when they open the door. I'm a very light sleeper when I'm sleeping someplace it's not my bed, and I hear everything. So, when I was in the hospital last October, I wasn't getting good sleep. And for a while I was sick as a dog because I get sick if I can't have my regular food, What keeps me going is allergies, and I didn't have any. And, I should have just had somebody bring me some from home. They would have done that, and I didn't want to put them out. Well, I didn't know it was going to get that bad. It did. I couldn't keep anything down. It was awful. And when you've just had abdominal surgery, they don't want you throwing up. So I had to be on oxygen for a while because I aspirated some of it and got aspiration pneumonia. First time in my life I've ever had any kind of pneumonia. It was scary. But I didn't have a lot of the symptoms of pneumonia that are so horrible. My sister's had pneumonia, and she describes it as trying to breathe through a tiny little straw. And that's what an asthma attack feels like. That's how people describe that. So it's like an asthma attack that doesn't end. You can't breathe well, and it's exhausting to do all the coughing they want you to do, because the respiratory therapist will come in and they'll say, honey, you got a cough. And, you don't want to cough because it hurts like a knife through the side of your rib cage. You don't want to breathe and cough and stuff. But if you don't cough and get that stuff out of your lungs, it will drown you. So it's important. that you do that. So, you know, I know what she's going through in the hospital, sort of. I haven't really experienced much of that. I've never had really bad pneumonia. So, you know, I didn't even have chest pain with my aspiration pneumonia. So it was definitely a lot milder than what she's going through. But it's very, very hard. I'm just about half crazy because she is very dear to me. And I don't want to lose her. But I'm preparing because things don't look very good right now. So I'll leave it at this. If you don't see me on tomorrow night, you'll know that I'm on the way out of town. So, just to let you know that we may have to travel. And I probably won't be doing a live stream if that happens. And it may not happen. You know, everything may be fine. She may make it through. There were a lot of times that my mother was sick and we didn't think she was going to pull through. And she did. But that last time, that didn't happen. She was 59 and she died from pneumonia. So, you know, just that grief from my mom, seeing her like that. And we had to pull the plug on her. It's terrifying to me. There is no feeling in the world like holding a person's hand. They're in a coma, they can't talk to you, their face is swollen, they look awful, just awful. And when somebody's in a coma, their eyelids are open a little bit. You see their eyes jittering underneath the eyelids. It's just such an awful thing. And you talk to them and they don't answer you because they're in a coma. They're not able to. They might hear you though, so you have to be careful what you say. Even if somebody's in a coma and the doctor tells you they're unconscious, they can't hear you, you still act as though they can hear you, because I have read stories from people who were in comas and they write about the experience and they say at times they could hear people. They couldn't respond, but they heard them. So you have to be very careful what you say to somebody who's in a coma, because you don't know what they can hear. They might be hearing you and they just look like they're totally unaware. Because a coma is just, it's not sleep, but it's levels of consciousness and it varies. So somebody might be close to waking up and then they don't, but they might hear something that goes on in that period while they're close to waking up. So definitely we need to remember that if we're around people in comas. Right now my sister is able to talk. She doesn't have the breath to talk, so I have not called her. I've just been kind of just waiting for a phone call. And I've talked to several of the other relatives today, and I will continue to do that. And that helps some, but none of us know anything because you can't know the unknowable. You don't know if somebody is going to live through something like this or if their brain is going to be the same. She's having high fevers. That can do brain damage. So it's a whole picture here. All we can do is wait. and waiting is hard. It's like pulling teeth. It's just really hard to concentrate on this game right now. Because I'm just very worried, and it's going to be like pulling teeth to get my mind off of it for a little bit. Because there's nothing I can do but pray. I've prayed a lot. And I don't get good feelings about what's going to happen. But I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to wait. And that's all I need to do. I think at this point I've been talking the whole time and not really been playing. I'm going to leave you, and I hope that y'all will have a good night. And I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow night. If things are the same and nothing has changed, I will be here. If we have to go out of town, I probably won't be on for a few days. So just a heads up to y'all that things are not going well here in the Cole household. So I just want to say take care, and if you've got people you love around them, go give them a hug, because you never know when maybe they're not going to be there. Not to scare you, but just to move you to get closer to the people in your lives. Don't let them be distant, even if you've got the political divide between you. Don't let that come between your relationship. Love each other and take care of each other. And I hope y'all take care until I see you again. Y'all take care and have a good night.